Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing fantastic out there this morning, having a great start to your day. And I hope you all have been having a great week out there so far. Hopefully, it's a short week. I imagine most of us have Thanksgiving off, and hopefully, even the day after Thanksgiving off, that Friday. But I know not everybody has the luxury of having a short week this week. Trust me, been there, done that. I've worked on Thanksgiving before back when I used to work 2 jobs, so I get it. But regardless, I hope you guys are making the best out of it and having a fantastic week out there so far. I got you an update on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Tuesday. This system continues to move east that we've been talking about for the last several days. This is bringing a lot of rain for a lot of folks in the eastern U.S., even a severe weather threat that is there this morning into this afternoon, even into later tonight for areas of the Carolinas, maybe Virginia, areas of eastern Georgia. And then we have a lot of rain that's going to overspread the northeast and some interior northeast snow. Some folks can see their most snow they've seen so far this cool season, this fall or winter season so far. So we'll give you some updated information on that, talk about how much snow, how much rain for all these areas, speak on the severe weather threat, how bad could it potentially be a little bit later on today, and we'll try to get the timing right for some of you folks. And then we'll speak on a system that is going to enter the Pacific Northwest and break it all down for you folks. Stay tuned for tonight. I will give you an update on what's coming forward, like the last several days of November into the first few days of December. We will speak on what the pattern is going to look like heading into the last month of the year. So if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And thank you all for the amazing support. I really appreciate it. And if you folks got anything I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it. And I promise you guys, other people are praying over them too. Let's get rocking this morning. So as you can tell, you got a lot of white on this side of the screen. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that the white on the water vapor loop indicates more moisture in the atmosphere, and sure enough, we're dealing with a lot of it in these drought-stricken regions. You know, unfortunately, I did watch some videos when I first woke up this morning of some wildfires that were starting to get pretty active in the North Carolina and Tennessee mountains, specifically along Interstate 40, basically right when it crosses into North Carolina, Tennessee, and vice versa. It looks like there was a wildfire ongoing. So hopefully this rain is knocking these fires out. Let's hope that is the case. You guys give me an update if you live in the mountains of North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia on these fire situations. I would love updated information. I really would. And including the areas that got impacted by severe weather yesterday across Mississippi, Louisiana, eastern Texas, Mississippi, I think I already said that, but let me know what you guys saw. Luckily, I think that it did not end up being as bad as what it could have been. So, but you guys let me know what you guys saw yesterday. I would love to know. But this system is entering the Pacific Northwest, as you can tell. And here's this positively tilted trough. You can kind of see it on water vapor loop pretty well. Positively tilted trough means you got a weaker system. Neutral tilted means it's kind of going like this. And then a negative tilt means it's going like that. I know that's a lot of crisscrossing, but anyways, when you have a negatively tilted trough, that means you have the potential for a dynamic and dangerous storm system with severe weather, potentially heavy snow on one side. Luckily, we're not dealing with that, or it would be even more high impact out there. So a little bit of freezing rain in the upper portions of Michigan, and a lot of moisture about to really take over all of the Northeast, including some interior Northeast snow. So that's what's going on out there right now. You can tell this line of storms is bubbling up here and ongoing with a severe weather threat that continues for areas of the deep south. But here's a system. It's very large. Moisture from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up into the northern portions of Michigan, where we are dealing with a little bit of freezing rain. I am wondering if there's enough cold air aloft for some of this to be falling in some snow in Wisconsin. You guys let me know. I would love to know right outside of Green Bay, about an hour or two west of Milwaukee. Let me know what you're seeing in sort of the south central area of Wisconsin. A lot of heavy rain moving over and taking over these areas that really, really needed across the Appalachian Mountain Range, and a little bit of freezing rain showing up in these higher elevations. If you live in the higher elevations of West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, please let me know what kind of glaze you're seeing. I would love to know. You guys always send me your reports. I'll read every single one of them. I would love to know. But all this moisture will continue to overspread. It's very cold in the Northeast this morning. One of your colder mornings of the fall season. So cold air is locked in place. This moisture is on the way. it's going to be interesting what happens later on today in the time period. So we got the ongoing severe weather threats. Nothing too crazy ongoing right at this moment. That could change, by the time some of you folks watch this, but just some heavy rain and some storm activity. I don't even think we have a severe warning storm right now. It's raining at my house here in central South Carolina. We've already picked up over a quarter inch. So a lot of beneficial rains are falling for sure this morning. So pretty quiet out west. Storm Prediction Center today, there is a slight risk, and this is really geared towards later this morning to early afternoon, but there's a level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. This includes Columbus all the way through Dothan, Montgomery, Mobile, Alabama, not quite to Tallahassee, but pretty much the extreme western sections of the panhandle of Florida. Marginal risk extends all the way up to the Norfolk area, like Virginia Beach, Southeast Virginia, okay? Includes Raleigh, Charlotte, Columbia, Atlanta, and just a general risk of thunderstorms in Charleston all the way down to about Jacksonville. So what's the threat for today? You got a 5% risk of a tornado, really for right now all the way through about early afternoon. Within 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in any given location. Got a 2% risk, same kind of criteria in the green area. Wind threat, okay, just a 5% risk today. Okay, hail threat, it's below 5%. So not a big risk of winds or hail, but it's still going to be some gusty winds out there. As far as flooding, this is the good news. The good news is we're not having a massive flooding event, because a lot of times we get way too much rain way too fast in these drought-stricken areas. Okay, this is a nice steady rain for the most part for a lot of these regions. Okay, so just a marginal risk of flash flooding. That means you got at least a 5% risk of flash flood guidance being met in these regions. So that's the good news. Watches and warnings. It's pretty active out there. This is wind advisories in this kind of tan color. I'm not sure if you still have those high wind warnings ongoing in the kind of the Smokies of the Tennessee and North Carolina mountains, but you do still have the ongoing red flag warnings. But the good news is, like I said, rain is falling. Wind advisories all the way up the spine of the Appalachian Mountains, even some high wind. What is that? I always get confused. These colors are always weird. High wind warnings around the Buffalo area, points south. So very strong winds coming off Lake Erie. Got some winter weather advisories for a little bit of freezing rain in Michigan. Same kind of deal with a little bit of snow maybe mixing in these areas right into here. Okay, includes a few counties in Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia, and Virginia. Let me know what you guys are seeing in this area. And then we got winter weather advisories in the Adirondacks, Green and White Mountains, basically areas in Vermont, New Hampshire, and then western Maine. And then a few counties in Massachusetts, okay, for, some winter weather later on today. And I would be interested to see if anybody upgrades to a winter storm warning. I think some areas could see over a half a foot of snow in some certain areas, and especially these higher elevations. Okay, we do have winter storm watches in a good chunk of Wyoming, southern Montana, winter weather advisories for basically all of eastern Idaho, southeastern Idaho, and then the heart of Montana, and some high wind warnings continue for certain areas of Montana, breezy conditions, and still very, very windy conditions down here in Southern California, where we have wind advisories, even some high wind warnings. So be careful down there driving. Any kind of truckers on the road, definitely don't get caught in some of these winds. So middle of the country continues to be rather quiet. But let's talk about the Southeast first, and that's what the HRRR model is showing. But let's take a look at the radar. So this is what's going on right now. Heavy rain into Mobile. We got some rain up into Montgomery. But this is kind of the area that we watch a little bit later today. And as this kind of moves eastward in general, we could have a severe weather threat. Now, I would say behind this pretty much ends. So I think Baton Rouge, New Orleans even, I think your severe weather threat is pretty much done. The rain is just about done. But we'll watch to see if these cluster up at all. You could have a tornado warning later today, maybe a severe thunderstorm warning. So we'll watch for these storms. I think this is the biggest area to watch here in the next few hours. The HRRR model shows it. It shows it moving on through. We'll watch these storms as they try to intensify around lunchtime around Montgomery. Kind of all the way up into northwest Georgia. Some stronger winds maybe associated with some of these storms. Maybe some stronger storms just off the coastline of the panhandle of Florida. And these continue, and the threat will persist for even southeast Alabama, the panhandle of Florida, all the way through about late afternoon, maybe even the early evening. And then I think it really starts to work its way fully into Georgia and the Carolinas by the time we get into late evening. So, these are the storms. We'll start it here around 9 a.m. Stormy conditions around these will try to intensify around Montgomery, points northeast, points east and south. And, they'll just kind of ride through the area. Watch out Columbus maybe a little bit later this afternoon. But, I don't think that the threat today is near as high as it was yesterday. So let's hope that nothing really gets going this morning later on today. If we look at, let's see, the updraft velocity swath, it's not very high. So it's not indicating a whole lot of rotation with these storms. But, this doesn't always give us a great idea. It gives us the best idea it can. But, the updraft velocity swath, definitely not as worrisome today compared to yesterday. The Carolinas and surrounding region, this includes areas of Georgia, eastern, Tennessee, areas of Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia. A lot of rain will continue to move, pretty much affect all the western Carolinas. The central Carolinas will continue throughout most of the period. We get into this afternoon, rain will continue throughout areas of Virginia, on and off, in areas of eastern North Carolina. But what happens after this, I think we get some warm, moist air that really builds quickly. It'll be a quick-moving warm sector that really takes over areas of the Carolinas. I think Columbia, Augusta, the atmosphere will change later this afternoon where some warm, moist air moves in. This will create the ingredients for a strong to severe thunderstorm risk. And, I think the mountains of North Carolina, Tennessee, even all the way up to Virginia, could see some stronger storms later on this afternoon, all the way down to Atlanta. It could get pretty stormy this afternoon. And then the Greenville-Spartanburg area, the Macon region, all the way up into Boone, maybe southwest areas of Virginia, Hickory, North Carolina, some storms will move through, and these will pack some gusty winds. And this is kind of the last hurrah with this system down here. But, we get into this evening, and then look at this little thin line right here. There's going to be some gusty winds with this little line moving through the heart of Virginia, later this evening, right? Basically through the entire state of Virginia, North Carolina, all the way down into Georgia. So, expect a little bit of a severe weather risk with this later this evening. If you're heading off to bed around 9 or 10 o'clock, you could hear some stuff rattling around outside your house as this line of storms moves through. And then the trough really slows down, and you could just continue to deal with a lot of heavy rain down here in the eastern Carolinas throughout the early morning hours tomorrow. And as you're waking up tomorrow morning for your Thanksgiving Eve, along the I-95 corridor, it could be quite rainy, quite stormy. And these... All right, there's your weekly sneeze. Thank y'all. But you're waking up tomorrow morning from Savannah, the Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, all the way up to the Norfolk area to maybe some stormy conditions and some heavy rain. Okay, so yeah, and then this just continues tomorrow morning. But rainfall between now and the next 24 hours, guys. I mean, a lot of rain's going to fall in the western Carolinas, upstate of South Carolina, the heart of Virginia, the Delmarva region. A good bit of rain is going to fall. And some much-needed rain will fall into Georgia, too, but not as much as upstate South Carolina, the Piedmont, and the Triad of North Carolina, and up into Virginia, where 1, 2, maybe 3 inches of rain could fall. I think some of these areas will just see rain all day. Kentucky, half inch to an inch of rain is possible. Let's talk about the Northeast, and we'll include Ohio with this and areas of the Delmarva and the Mid-Atlantic. I want to start off by saying it is cold in New England this morning. Okay, in the low 20s in Boston, the teens away from the city and Mass. I mean, I'm not sure if maybe you might have your first freeze of the season in New York City. It's always hard to get your first freeze there because you have the urban heat island of the city that creates warmth around the city. It's like a warm bubble. But man, up in the higher elevations, low teens, you probably have some single digits up here. It's a very cold morning. So with a cold morning, you got moisture moving in at the same time. You're going to be dealing with a little bit of freezing rain before warm air moves in at the surface in the higher elevations of central Pennsylvania. And then you continue to keep this going. All right, you stop it right here. It's around 3 p.m. Eastern time. You got heavy rain that's continuing for eastern Ohio. Heavy rain pretty much for all of West Virginia, starting to move out of eastern Kentucky. A cold rain for Pennsylvania, but these northern sections of Pennsylvania, like the Poconos into the Catskills of New York State, it's probably going to start out as a thumping of snow. Now, it's not everybody. Some people in the lower elevations will just be good old rain. But man, it is just a soaker today for the Mid-Atlantic. And then this starts to take over the New York City area. it starts to flirt with southern New England. And you stop it here, it's around 6 p.m. And it is snowing pretty heavily in central New York State. I mean, Binghamton, you guys could start off with a burst of snow. Certainly areas of maybe like Syracuse up to Watertown, and pretty much all the small towns and communities in the Adirondacks and the northern sections of New York State. I think you guys are going to get a solid burst of snow later today. And to keep this going, this takes us to about 9 p.m. I mean, a lot of warm air advection, which means the column is saturated, which means that the atmosphere is going to be squeezing out as much moisture as possible. We call this a front-end thumping. And if you look at the soundings right here in the middle of New York State, it shows it well. If it would load. Come on, baby. All right, here we go. 31 degrees. So, I mean, it's just cold enough for snow at the surface, right? Well, we've seen it snow much warmer than that. But anyways, what I want you to look at is you see the dew points in the green. See how they're riding right up against the temperatures in the lower levels of the atmosphere, which is right into here. This means that there's not a lot of dry air, and certainly no dry air in the low levels or even in the mid levels. You got to get, 30, 40, 50,000 feet up in the air before you find some dry air, okay? So dew points are riding right up against the temperature, which means it is going to be puking snow at about 31 degrees in some of these areas. So my viewers up here in the Adirondacks, later this evening, even Vermont, New Hampshire, it is going to be snowing very heavy, wet snow at the beginning of this system. Okay? Column is saturated, just squeezing out every little bit of moisture as possible. And this continues, guys, throughout the late evening hours. And I mean, it's snowing even into the higher hills, the Worcester Hills, Wasta, Willie and the Wonka Factory. I don't know. You guys, it's funny. You guys always, and trust me, I'm not offended at all. When you guys correct me in the comments, it's like the corrections don't agree with the other corrections, if that makes sense. So it's like you can tell there's some disagreement on how to pronounce it, even for the folks who live there. I thought I had it right by saying like the Worcester Hills, the Worcester Hills, but yeah. Anyways, don't get me going on that again. But anyways, that region of Massachusetts could certainly see some heavy snow. I know that there's an area of higher elevations right into here in central Mass, and then there's an area of higher, the Berkshires, right here in western Mass, extreme western Mass. You guys could see a few inches of snow in these areas, okay? I know it's very elevation driven in Massachusetts, especially when you get to the central and western portion of the state. So it's definitely going to be one of those days. I think just about all of Vermont, New Hampshire could see some snow, except maybe southeast New Hampshire. But man, you're talking about a burst of snow overnight. If you go to sleep pretty early, you're going to go to sleep, not a whole lot on the ground. You might wake up tomorrow morning with a coating of snow, and then this begins to take over Maine tomorrow morning. And I think most of Maine sees some snow, except if you live along the coastal regions of Maine. And this could be a pretty decent snow event for you folks in Maine also. But not to ignore you folks in areas of southern New England. I think you will get some gusty winds today, especially with this line of storms that kind of surges through the Delmarva overnight. Could mess with some power. I think you will get some gusty winds, but I don't think it's anything you guys can't handle. But definitely a soaker later this evening, overnight, for all of the Northeast. But speaking of the snow, just between now and tomorrow morning, I think some of this snow will fall in a matter of a couple hours. So a couple inches of snow very quick in the Adirondacks, the higher hilly regions, the mountainous regions of Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire. 1,000 feet can make a difference between just a wet ground and maybe a couple inches of snow in this kind of event. Okay, so a few inches of snow starting to show up in western and southwestern Maine. But if you keep this going all the way through the entire period, like I said, some areas are going to get close to a foot of snow, especially if you live way on up there. So I think we're going to see some nice footage. Please tag me in some footage if you're viewing from this area and you have social media. I think you'll see a nice front-end thumping of snow in these regions for sure. Rainfall from this, Ohio, sometimes I leave you guys out, and I do apologize, but you guys are going to see, depending on where you are, anywhere from a half inch to an inch of rain throughout the day. It's already raining in this area this morning. Same thing with West Virginia, especially once you get into the Panhandle of West Virginia and the eastern sections. 1 to 2 inches of rain is possible in this area. And you look at areas of the Mid-Atlantic here, and just a soaker in Virginia. You're going to put a nice dent into this rain. It's not going to, into this drought. It's not going to knock the drought out. But man, if you live from, Roanoke, yeah, just Washington D.C. up to Baltimore, Philly, 2 to 3 inches of rain expected throughout the next 24 hours. Just a soaker in these regions for sure. So yeah, and speaking of ice in this region, I don't want to leave you guys out. Maybe goodness, it really has kind of an area of cold air really entrenched into the West Virginia mountains. And I would love to, if any folks are viewing from the higher elevations of West Virginia, let me know how much ice you're seeing. But, it's going with another 1/10 to 2/10 of an inch of ice added on to what you've already seen this morning. So please be careful in this region, guys. We could definitely have some high-end ice and definitely a solid glaze into the western 2 or 3 counties of Maryland, even into the higher terrain of Pennsylvania. So please be careful with this ice for sure. The south central U.S., quiet weather settles in. Some showers could drift in from the north and eastern Oklahoma, maybe even western Arkansas, southwestern Missouri. Maybe some lingering showers later this evening around the Baton Rouge, New Orleans area. Not a big deal. And that's about it for the south central. Enjoy it. Today will be a much better travel day across the region. So if you're making any trips to grandma's house, definitely going to be a nice day for it. Up here in the north central, a little bit more active. You guys are going to deal with just a complete washout throughout the morning in Michigan. Some of this will make it all the way into the extreme eastern UP of Michigan. You could deal with a switch over to snow. It's very possible. Some lingering freezing rain. And then this kind of carries on into Ontario. And there's that low pressure, and some showers will continue to sort of hang around in eastern areas of Michigan. But it should clear out by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning for the most part. A little bit of glazed ice is possible. A couple 1/100ths of an inch, not a whole lot, but you could be. Let me know what you're seeing in Michigan this morning. I would love to know. And then the snow, not a whole lot, maybe a 1/10 to 2/10 of an inch of snow is possible in these regions. So maybe a dusting is very, very, very possible. So, but as far as just good old fashioned rain up here, between now and tomorrow morning, I mean, it's already raining. Some of this is already accounted for. What's already failed, but another 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of rain is possible from central to southern Michigan, 1/4 to a 1/2 inch in northern Michigan, and you will continue to see some rain in the Chicago region. But western U.S., most of the day is quiet, but our next system is moving in. So the Olympic Mountains, Seattle, the Cascades will begin to see some moisture. Pretty much, I would say all of western Washington state will start to see some rain, higher elevation snow. Some rain will even make its way into northwest sections of Oregon, northern areas of Idaho, and then the far northwest corner of Montana. We'll talk more about this system a little bit later tonight, but this is what's going to happen between now and the next 24 hours. Talking about rain, but just between now and the next 24 hours, maybe a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch of rain in Seattle. I think that this is going to start out as a warmer system, so a lot of this will just be rain in most of the higher terrain here, and the Olympic Mountains and the Cascades. We'll see some snow for sure. In fact, we can just look at the snow real quick, and just a little bit, a couple inches of snow in these higher elevations are certainly possible. But speaking of temperatures, guys, it's going to be a very cold day in the Northeast ahead of this winter weather event. Some areas will just deal with a raw, cold rain, very cold rain. You got a little bit of some cold air damming along the eastern slopes of the mountains and just east. So, I think there'll be a pretty stout temperature gradient from, I would say, Columbia, South Carolina to the Greenville-Spartanburg area. These can sometimes verify on the colder end. So I think it'll remain very chilly and sort of the Piedmont to the Triad to the foothills region of North Carolina and South Carolina today. Cold day. Will maintain in areas of the mid-Atlantic, and then the southeast, the rest of the southeast, 60s and 70s, but the heart of the country, pretty chilly. I mean, so even just some 30s to 40s, some 50s down to Texas, so chilly day. The western U.S., it's warming up in some areas, but for the most part, we're a tick below average or around average temperature-wise. Montana, some warm conditions today. You guys will rise into the 50s, so I would say that's a little bit above average, but yeah, guys, that's about it. Not going to really talk about what's coming up. We'll leave that for tonight's video, and I'm running out of time here. But God bless all y'all. Have a great day, and I'll be with you guys later this evening. Talk to you soon.